Hi there folks, over the next few minutes I'm going to share with you some concepts around trust and provide some practical behaviors that really contribute to building trust both in the workplace or at home. So what is trust about? Well, folks, within us we've got this incredible operating system. It's highly efficient at ensuring our survival, and what it does is when we meet other people, there's a subconscious system that kicks in and it wants to assess, are you friend or foe? Now this can even be with people we've known for a while. So if somebody gets upset with us, this operating system kicks in and goes, whoa, right now in this moment, that person's a foe. And what it does is it brings on the masks, the armor. We call them the ego masks, so you get defensive or you start screaming back or fighting back. And what that does, that's no longer in a trust position, because what we're doing is we're working with our armor. We're not allowing people inside into us. We're not allowing them to see what we really are feeling. And that's what trust is about. It's about allowing people inside our own emotions and being vulnerable. So I feel for a leader, as a servant leader, for example, one of the most important aspects is to develop trust with their teams so that you are allowed into their sacred space of how they're feeling. This is the place where you get to really know the people or get to learn what they're about. This is the place where productivity and creativity happen. And without that, all you're dealing with are the masks on the outside. So how do we actually work with developing trust? What are some practical behaviors? One of the first behaviors is to listen, folks. I think Stephen Covey said it's important to listen with the intent to understand, not to respond. So when we are listening, we are paying full attention to that person. One of the biggest distractions that we have when we are listening is our own thoughts. So to pay attention that when our own thoughts kick in, to go back to our breathing and let our breathing bring ourselves back to the present moment and to that person. Another practical behavior is to be genuinely curious, to work with open questions. For example, beginning with what, where, why, how, when. When you ask these questions, you allow the person to really open up and express themselves more fully. It's always a great idea beforehand to get permission to ask questions so that they don't feel like they're being challenged. A third behavior is to display empathy. Now, what is empathy? Well, for me, it's not saying I know how you feel, because we never know how the other person truly feels. For me, the closest I get to empathy is when I relate what they're telling me, a story they are telling me. It's when I relate to that story in my own life. When something like that or something similar happened in my own life, and I kind of feel alongside them. And that's the best thing I can do. When we are working with empathy, we are not trying to provide answers or solutions, because most of the time people just want to express how they are feeling. Another wonderful behavior that really opens and builds trust is about appreciation. Finding something to appreciate in that person. It can be as simple as saying thank you for making the time for us to meet this morning. But quietly, if you look at that person and find something in their stories they're telling you to appreciate, you'll feel that they will actually feel that as well. And that makes them feel more psychologically safer, and they will open up. The behavior that I find which is very important is to walk the talk. In other words, if you say you're going to do something, follow through on that. And if you aren't going to, then it's fair to give fair warning to say, I'm not going to be able to follow through on it as I promised, but this is the next time I do promise to deliver whatever it is I'm going to deliver. Now, one of the most basic practical aspects of following through on our commitments is, for example, keeping time. If there's a meeting, to be on time for a meeting. It's amazing how we have a culture where people just rock up late. That takes away trust, because it's displaying no care and respect to the other person's time. If you can't deliver on the small things, then how are you going to deliver on the really big things? Something that's very important in terms of building up trust is to understand each other's expectations. What do they expect of you? What do you expect of those folk? Even in personal relationships, to understand each other's boundaries. And I feel through this communication, we learn to respect those boundaries. So for example, in the workplace, to even understand that, fellow teammates may have family. So after hours, not to go out there and disrupt their family time. Another great area to build trust is where you discover areas that you both have similar interests. It could be parenthood, it could be hobbies, whatever it is, that really allows the other person to feel like they see something in you that they see within themselves, and that really allows them to open up. And yes, one final aspect is, you can do all these things really well, get it right all the time, and then just that one thing happens, and all of a sudden you've fallen out of favor and they close up. And this is what does happen. You get 10 things right, one thing wrong, and the ego will close off, because why all of a sudden you foe again? Well, one of the quickest ways to recover from this, and I think Stephen Covey mentioned in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is he refers to it when you make the withdrawal from the emotional bank account, is to apologize, to say you are sorry. And that apology should include acknowledging feelings, that apology should include accountability, and it should really come from the heart. And when you do that, you may not recover 100%, but you're definitely going to make ground on what you did lose previously to that. And if you combine all these behaviors, you'll soon find that people are magnetized to you. They will share a lot more with you than they otherwise would. And yes, you might discover that you have a much more healthier and closer connected relationship than you had before. So those are just some thoughts, folks. And until we chat again, take care and stay aware.